I was just reflecting that for most of my gaming career, I think that I've always been not playing grimdark. I've been playing the guy or person who wants to be recognized as the hero, and just to own this. And it comes out where I think that by being a character who sticks to his values and keeps going, I'm kind of missing out on some of the joy of going into the darkness and coming out, or changing, or something like that. Reflecting on like Alex, I've just created him, and I had to come up with a reason why he's going out and fighting crime, essentially, and I gave him the psychological.
Right.
Yeah, or monsters. I gave him the psychological situation that he's a thrill seeker.
Right.
So I'm sitting here listening to this, conceiving of how I can play this out in terms of he has a struggle between, I don't really want to have this big responsibility, so every time something comes down on me, I go out and I go looking for monsters or something. And I think that adds a bit more juice to the character.
In older forms of Champions, it was, and bearing in mind that we're talking about games that were initially written when role-playing was very young, the way you changed your formal psychological profile was actually to give up points that you could otherwise use for character improvement. Right? I mean, there was no formal way in the game, as written at the time, to change up your disadvantages, they called them. Whereas in Champions now, you're allowed to shift around your situations once it seems like you should. And that's okay. So I'm just saying that particular system is sort of made.
Well, and that was a point that came up for me.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That was the point that came to my mind is that many games give you like a psychological profile or something like that. Often it's like they're static, at least in mechanical terms, they're static. And so, my experience with those has always been, well, I've always got to come back to playing this disadvantage or this characteristic that I gave myself. And so that is the difference between the games that in the past gave you that mechanical thing and the ones that didn't, is that the ones that didn't allowed you the freedom to change, whereas the ones that did at least put a lot of pressure behind, well, I'm not playing that and I should be, or I get extra XP if I play that. I'm not.
I want to return to the A word in a moment about that, but instead, at the moment, I'd like to hear from Helma and Manu about the sense of characters undergoing change, because as you said, both of your characters really changed. I mean, the Lone Star guy hasn't had a chance to change much. The Alexandra, what was the name of your troublesome your avatar of difficulty?
Yeah, I call her Octavia Pugio.
Okay. I like that, Octavia Pugio.
And she was kind of, I found out later, like after making the character, that I watched the series Rome before, and possibly she was based on this awful legionnaire guy,
right? The one of the main
but it was like I didn't connect the dots at first, like after like the second session or something.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I watched that series with a number of female friends, and I noticed they had a certain interest in that character, I must say. But as it turned out, okay, so but yeah, going back to Helma and Manu, we're talking about characters who, unlike the three of us here, the three others of us, your characters changed in a way that felt very logical to you, or perhaps undeniable. Do you want to?
Yeah. Okay, I go first. I mean, part of it is that I think people are formed by circumstances, things that happen to you, and that's part of life. And I want to see that experience in how I play. It's part of the fun for me. I maybe it's easier if you aren't determined to be the hero.
I think that's probably true, because then you will land wherever you land.
Well, not wherever. I mean, what I'm trying to do is still to keep things kind of logical, maybe the wrong word, but consistent, maybe. So I don't want to jump back and forth. I'm trying to have some arc in there. There is a starting point, and things are developing. But
I think of it as honoring whatever you're going to do next. Let's at least honor what's happened already.
Yes,
and if
yes,
it's different, then
exactly.
we know it's different. Right.
And I'm trying to even take into account what's happening when I'm rolling dice, and how that would influence things.
Yeah, that's been huge in that game, actually. We have had amazingly, it's the plot, if you want to call it that, has been extremely heavily influenced by specific dice rolls. Quite a lot.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I sometimes you're tempted to try to influence the dice, but so far
I know. They don't listen.
Yeah, but it's fun to try to get along with it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think so very much. Cool. Yeah. Manu, did you want to talk about that?
Well, I mean, I think this is getting at you're getting at the core of probably why I enjoy gaming, right? What it is about, and maybe about role playing, and maybe about drama or fiction in general that I enjoy, which is seeing what happens to a character when they're put under pressure, right? When they're, because a lot of us think, okay, I'm a good person and I have these values and I
would
do
never
this and
do
this,
right.
Right, exactly. But when the pressure comes, right, can you really stick to that, or what choice are you going to make when it's not so easy, right?
Or what would you do that you wouldn't do and you feel good about it?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
I'm somewhat notorious in my games for going there in my designs. So go on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's when you have that choice under pressure, and then what happens at that point, that's what I really find interesting. And there's not that many, when I think about the different games I've played, like I like very few games because most of them don't facilitate this very well. Like they don't have many, I mean, like Sorcerer and Trollbabe are maybe different. Like they're maybe the ones that I've seen that I've never really had the chance to play Sorcerer, and I want to sometime. And I think from what I've seen about it, that is one of the games that can really facilitate those kind of moments happening. But it seems to me most games don't really. I don't know. Is that just my cynicism, or
I'm not sure if it's cynicism, and I don't think it's wrong. But I'm going to suggest a couple of thoughts that have occurred to me. One is that it seems a shame that if you have a game that assigns you a profile of behavior of some kind, for lack of a better word, a value system, some characterization. So you can pick any synonym you want, but they all mean the same thing, right? Some kind of who you are, identity of some kind is assigned to you, or you choose. that in many games there's no acknowledgement that that can change. And I've noted that many people hate games with behavioral descriptors because they feel as though it's a prison. And they get very upset by them. And then I've also noted that other people dislike games where you start as a blank because they've been in too many situations where it remains a blank. So therefore, we're cursed, right? But before we move on with that, we could feel cursed that either we play blanks. I'm playing the fighter and the classic, playing the cleric, right? Complete blank. Or you're playing your thespian, loud, characterized, colorful character who is supposed to be played exactly like that forever. And neither of those sounds appealing to me at all. And so it's interesting to imagine games where the characters' values and relationships and notions of what's important can change. I was thrilled in the mid-late 80s to read Aaron Alston's supplement for Champions called Strike Force, in which the changes in the point structures, the social roles, and the values of the characters were evident in the presentation. And it was blatantly obvious that in that game that they had played, and it was played with the earliest champions, that they didn't know where it was going. They had no idea that this character would grow up into this position. They had no idea. And that the game itself actually facilitated this to happen. And that is a game where you often start with behavioral descriptions. So ever since my Champions experience, I've always been puzzled at the choice. Either I'm playing a loud, unchanging character in the sense of that actor is really good or really loud or really, colorful in some way, but that's what the character is. Or I play a blank defined specifically by my niche position in terms of what I do relative to everyone else. I'm going to play Call of Cthulhu, going to play the ditzy intellectual. I'll just do my ditzy intellectual again, right? All the way through.
Comment?
Yeah.
So it seems to me that, there is the question of how does the game mechanically support that, and there's the momentum that comes into place if you describe things in some kind of given terms at the beginning of character creation. So there's the momentum that gives you of getting stuck if there's no way to change those. But it also seems to me that even if a game has a mechanic for changing, that there's a lot of we have to rely on the group developing the skills to stay focused. It's kind of a cultural thing.
It is, but I can break that into two parts. One part of that is that, just as Alexandra has showed, she's not doing this in a vacuum. She's doing this with the interactions with the other characters and their willingness for, the mission to go awry. Right? Their willingness to say, ooh, look how she messed it up this time. Let's do this, right? And see how this goes. And even my character who's grumpy about it, keeps wanting to get back to finding the right horse. Thank you. The player is fully aware that the contrast between their characters is fun, right? So as opposed to being pissed at Alexandra for screwing it up again, right? So that's one thing, is the attention to one another's, contributions and changes. The other one is mechanics. And one of the interesting things, being identified myself as a very mechanics-heavy designer and essayist, I want to point out that I don't think that game mechanics can be wonderful prompts sometimes. And they can be supporters of what you do or where the system has led you, perhaps with or without roles. They can be supporters of that. but they will not play the character for you. You can have all the personality descriptors on your sheets and all the bonuses you get for playing to your character, and that is just such empty crap, right? Here's your character trait. When you play your character trait, get +1 to your roll. Oh, it's deadly. Absolutely deadly. It's not system does matter at all. It's completely flat. So yeah, Alexandra.
Can you say more about that? Like, why does it become flat like that?
Well, okay, go ahead.